Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, jambo. Bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are so very, very happy that you're part of our beautiful Reading with Your Kids family. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, or wherever you find your podcast. We have a fantastic and hilarious show for you tonight. The guys from 5 Meets Comics are here. Oscar Garza, Rolando Esquivel. They're celebrating their wonderful comic, Lemon Pepper Huggz. Before Oscar and Rolando come in here, I want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by The Adventures of Johnny Pocket Band, Battle of the Bands by Linda Phelps. Do you know a tween or a teen who struggles with stress and anxiety? Well, you know, if you know like more than 2 or 3 tweens or teens, then you're going to answer yes, because there are so many teens and tweens who are struggling with stress and anxiety. And I have the perfect book, The Adventures of Johnny Pocket Band by Linda Phelps. Johnny and his brother, Drummer Boy, are excited to compete in the Battle of the Bands. They have 2 months to get the band prepared, but everybody is like way nervous. Johnny has promised himself that he will conquer his anxiety this year and start to have fun. You know, with the help of his friends, he just might make it. The story captures the emotions, fears, and excitement of the preteen years. It's a difficult time for everyone, but this story opens a window of understanding as each kid shares their thoughts about fitting in, making friends, and the new unsettling feeling of being attracted to girls. This is a fantastic read for all families. The Adventures of Johnny Pocket Band, Battle of the Bands, is available on Amazon or on Linda's website, johnnypocket.net. The Adventures of Johnny Pocket Band, Battle of the Bands by Linda Phelps. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at TryStoried.com, the creators of the Storied app. Do you want to be a storytelling superhero? You know, be the parent or caregiver who is always ready with the perfect story at any time? If you answered yes, and why wouldn't you answer yes, have we got an app for you. It's the Storied app. That's right, the Storied app. This is a fantastic tool that will give you instant access to lots and lots of original stories created by top children's storytellers from all over the globe. Looking to help your child become more mindful? The Storied apps has some fantastic stories that will help do that. Are you looking to read a story that will help your kids to be kinder? Well, look no further than the Storied app. The Storied app features content from all over the world that helps kids develop a respect for other cultures and perspectives. And the stories have all been developed with the input of top children's developmental experts. And there's new content being added all the time. All of the Storied app stories were created to be read in about 5 minutes. The app is easy to navigate, and I personally love the special bookshelf feature that allows you to save your child's favorite stories. This is a super resource for every family. Check it out today. For more information, go to TryStoried.com. That's TryStoried.com. And we also want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by The Crabapple Tree by Tom O'Toole. This is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read, and we're really proud. This is a really powerful book. Tom O'Toole wrote The Crabapple Tree to teach kids how to accept and love the differences in all of us, especially the differences we see in ourselves. The Crabapple Tree is about bravery, courage, and standing up for yourself. It's about the athletic girl who is told, you know, you're not pretty enough. Or the sensitive boy who is told, real men don't cry. And it's also about the author, a gay boy who grew up convinced that something was terribly wrong with him. It's a story of hope deferred and a renewed belief in the fulfillment of longing. It's a story that elevates the marginalized and calls forth the ostracized. It's a story about the greatest voice speaking into the hopeless heart, saying, I see you. I made you. I love you. I Want You. The Crabapple Tree is a Reading with Your Kids certified great read, and it's available on Amazon. The Crabapple Tree by Tom O'Toole. Joining us on the line right now from Brownsville and Austin, Texas. No, there's not one person in two different places. Two different guests coming to us to talk about their really cool comic business, 5 Me Comics, and especially about their brand new comic, Lemon Pepper Huggz. Please welcome to the show Oscar Garza and Rolando Esquivel. Oscar, Rolando, how are you?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Rolando, did I pronounce your last name right?
Yes, sir. Perfect.
Oh, good. Oh, excellent. I'm getting better at this. So who is going to tell me about Lemon Pepper Huggz?
Sure, I'll kick it off. So Lemon Pepper Huggz, it's a little adventure story about 3 elementary school-aged kids. Lemon, her best friend Pepper, and her little brother Huggz, Pepper's little brother Huggz. And so basically it's just they grow up around each other, and it's just the different adventures that they go into or get into. They come from a neighborhood in the town of New Brownsville. We kind of took a creative stretch there with the name, not to be confused with our hometown of Brownsville. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's just them going on adventures and basically just kind of figuring out what it is to be a family, not just in their own families, but amongst themselves too. But yeah, it's loosely based on things that we went through, growing up. But it's more about the surroundings. It's more about the people and everything that are involved.
I love it, and I want to talk about the story and the characters, but first I just have to comment about the illustrations. They're just fun and colorful and funny and funky, and they're the kind of illustrations that I know kids will just gravitate to, and adults will love too.
Oh, thank you so much. That actually made my teeth whiter. It tastes good.
So am I right in assuming that, Oscar, you do the illustrations, and Rolando, you're the story guy?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, we both really work on the story.
Mm-hmm.
But it is something that I had thought up several years back. Nickelodeon had put out a call for a new kid series, and I started jotting down some notes for this series for Lemon Pepper Huggz, and then just here recently we started talking about it again, and we released it back in I believe it was March. But as far as the writing, as far as the story, we both go back and forth. But the original concept kind of came from me. But yeah, Oscar's the one that does the full artwork. I can draw stick figures, but I can't draw feet and hands and faces.
Well, you and I share that disability, I guess we call that.
There you go.
One of the things that I've talked about a lot on the show, and, my son, who's right now, he's a great young man, just got married a few months ago. So proud of him. One of the things that we kind of butted heads on, and it's because of my ignorance, was he loved comics. And I appreciated the fact that he loved comics, and I supported that, and, would go out and get him some comics. And he had 2 uncles who were really crazy into comics, too. But it would frustrate me because he wouldn't read any books that didn't have illustrations or pictures in them. And I remember, and I kind of feel bad just going into his room maybe every 2 or 3 weeks and saying, would you please just pick up a book once that doesn't have pictures in it? But
put down them funny pages.
Well, I've come to understand now that, reading comics, reading graphic novels, it's reading.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the thing is, it's like, if you take a kid like that who, no matter how hard you push him, he's only going to read comic books. Well, if you remove that, then the kid's going to go into his whole life not reading anything, which is a really not something you really want.
Exactly.
And it also helps with the it's a slightly different kind of adventure where you are using your imagination, but now you're using your imagination to fill in the blanks of the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty neat. It's kind of like a cartoon in your head.
Yeah, yeah. Now I'm looking at the sample of Lemon Pepper Huggz online. I'm looking at the great illustrations and just some of the action. Rolando, I'm guessing that New Brownsville is kind of a city kind of vibe to it, and a lot of fun and kind of crazy things happen.
Right. New Brownsville's, it's, loosely based on our hometown of Brownsville, Texas. And, we're deciding to use it as pretty much the base of our other works too. We have another project called Mashbone and Grifted that we have 3 issues, out on. And, that one's that one's more of a kind of detective kind of comedy story. Not so much geared towards all ages, a little more mature, but it's still in the same city. So we're kind of building this, slowly building, this little, I guess, universe here of our stories. And yeah, they all take place there in Brownsville. So Brownsville is, New Brownsville is used to pay homage to where we're from. But it's also we kind of use it for what we need it to be. It is definitely a border town, just like our hometown. But yeah, it can be a city. It can, it be it has its aspects of it that are like a small town. So yeah, it's just kind of whatever we need it to be at that certain point in time. But I mean, just like our town, it's not very big. It's not a huge city or anything like that. It's not like a Houston or Dallas or a New York or anything like that. But yeah, it's big enough to where you can get into a lot of wacky adventures like these kids do.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting because, I think some people know that we record, a number of interviews back to back, and then we publish them on different dates throughout the year. I just finished an interview with a lovely author who grew up in a small town in Mississippi, and it sounds just like on the other side of the planet from New Brownsville and from Boston, where I grew up. I could definitely, even though the characters in Lemon Pepper Huggz are, I guess Latinx is a proper word to use these days. They feel
it's a good option.
Okay,
there's never one word nowadays. It's what you feel comfortable with.
Well, that's good. Well, thank you very much for being kind to this old man here. It feels a lot more like the Boston in the neighborhood that I grew up in than that small town that my last guest grew up in. Tell me a little bit more about Pepper and her brother Hugo. What kind of mischief do they get into together?
Well, when it comes to Pepper, she's kind of the mom of the group. Because Lemon can be kind of a little hothead. She's very driven. So Pepper kind of helps to keep them together, to keep it together for the group. Mm-hmm. And Huggz, she has to take her little brother Huggz with her, everywhere she goes. That's kind of the mandate whenever I was growing up. Mm-hmm. Wherever my older brother went, I had to tag along with him. Yep. And we have a phrase in Spanish, is agarrados de la mano, which is, held, you got to hold their hand. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of the same thing. But Pepper, she's kind of the mom of the group. Her and Huggz have more of a traditional family, the mom and dad and everything, keeping the home and all that. So that's kind of where she learns from. Whereas Lemon, she lives with her aunt and her half brother, which is more of kind of a, I guess, non-traditional, I guess is a good term for that. But Pepper helps to kind of keep everything together, make sure that, Lemon doesn't go too far whenever she's kind of having her little tantrums, and just there to protect Huggz too, because that's her little brother. And Huggz, he's kind of a little toughie. Him and Lemon kind of have similar personality traits when it comes to that. They're kind of, do first, ask questions later kind of personalities. But yeah, Pepper's there to kind of keep everything centered for all 3 of them.
Now, what inspired two guys to create a comic series that featured 2 strong female characters in the lead?
Well, the number one reason that we wanted to make this comic is, over the past almost 2 years, we've been doing various book conventions for our other book, which is more adult. In fact, we just got some reviews calling it a well-contained, entertaining, politically relevant work, embracing common stereotypes featuring Latinx individuals, and forces the reader to confront them. That's a lot of fancy big words, because it's also pretty mature, and we don't really want to advertise that too much on this podcast. But the point is, my drawings are my drawings, and they look like kids would like them. I find them very animated. So a bunch of kids come up to our table and they want to buy this book, and we say, "Hey, Junior, sorry, this book's not for you." And then the kid will tell their parents, "This guy doesn't want to sell me a book." And we'll say, "Well, ma'am or sir, this book is very mature." And they'll say, "My kid's mature. I'll buy the book." So they buy the book. And after a couple conventions, you start feeling like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do that. Let's diversify. Let's come up with a kid's book. And it all fell into place. I had just finished issue 3 of Mashbone and Grifty, and it was time to start a new project. And Rolando had this sitting, on the back burner, and he showed it to me, and we're like off to the races.
It's fantastic. Now, how did you enjoy? Was it real difficult to go from writing kind of adult themed, politically charged work to doing something for kids?
Nah.
No, it
really wasn't.
Yeah, it was a little bit at first, but it really just kind of came down to just the dialogue, just kind of the phrasing that you're using, the attitude, just make sure there's no, bad words in it. Because our other book, it kind of plays a lot with the kind of like Spanglish, and we do with Lemon Pepper Huggz as well, but it's a little bit different because this is it's a little more tame. So in the end, it ended up not being very difficult to make that transition, because in Mashbone and Grifty, I mean, they're kind of like they're 20 somethings, but they're kind of like kids themselves, So that also made the transition a lot easier, especially with Mashbone. He's kind of a childlike kind of character. So we're just kind of using, how we normally write for Mashbone and just kind of spreading it across these 3 kids. But going back to writing, strong female leads, we both, have sisters, older sisters and younger sisters. So we've grown up, around strong women all our lives. So it just, for me, it's kind of, paying respect to them. That's why, they live with, that's why, like Lemon, for example, lives with her aunt. I was, taken care of and raised, by my aunts as well. My mom was around, of course, but whenever she had to work, my aunts kind of took over and stuff like that. So that's where a lot of that comes from. A lot of this is based on our reality, except, we just kind of mess around with it a little bit. So again, it's just something that we kind of grew around with. We grew around with a lot of strong women and still, still to this day, still have, a lot of strong women around us and stuff. And, just like with Pepper, they help to keep things together. And that's again, that's a reality that we have in our lives.
Absolutely. Having very strong women in my life, I can absolutely agree with you. It's wonderful, and they do keep us in line, don't they?
Absolutely.
Now, how did the writing team of Oscar and Rolando come together?
Well, I sent out an ad on Craigslist for a writer. No, I'm just kidding.
I thought I was buying a couch.
I did sell him a couch one. Well, we grew up together. We met in, what was it, like 7th or 8th grade?
8th grade, yeah.
Yeah, and I forgot the name of the teacher. We called him Popcorn Head because he had hair like popcorn. Do you remember that wrestler, Mr. Perfect? He looked like that guy.
Okay. All right. Yep. I do remember that.
Anyways,
that's perfect. Yeah.
That's not relevant to the story. I'm just trying to paint a picture.
Yes. Well, as an illustrator, that's what you do.
So, he ran with a group of guys. I ran with a group of guys, and we sat together in class, and we started talking about wrestling, which we connected because we were both super huge wrestling fans, and we had the same style of humor, and we just started hanging out.
That's awesome. Did you? I'm imagining, you're in Mr. Popcornhead's class and you're talking about stories and creating these comics in class and trying very hard not to get caught and get in trouble.
Oh, indeed, we did get in trouble though, but
a lot.
But
They would always separate us because we talked a lot, and which was funny because we were kind of like both kind of quiet kids, but they put us together. We just kept talking, and even in high school, whenever we'd sit together to try to split us apart. But by the end of it all, we always ended up sitting back together and just continuing to make jokes and kind of get in trouble like that.
Yeah.
And the best thing is like the main reason the connection works is that at the time he had his friends and I had my friends, but I had things I was super passionate about that these other group of kids weren't. And it would happen to be similar things that he was passionate about. So then we got to talk about those things. And that's how friends happen.
That's how friends happen. Absolutely. Hey, one of the things I'd love to ask you about, because we were talking about, your characters are Latinx characters, and talk a little bit about how important you think it is for kids to see themselves in books, in comic books.
It's crazy important, because if you don't see people that look like you doing great things, it's hard to aspire to do great things.
That's one of the things that one of the authors that we had sent me a beautiful book. Jen Swanson, who is our dean of all things STEM and STEAM, sent me her astronaut aquanaut book, and it was autographed. And she sent it for my wife's best friend, who is the principal of a school here in Boston, and the 90% of the kids at that school are from El Salvador and Mexico, and they got the book, and they were kind of going through the pages because they had to, until they got to the page where they were talking and they met a Latino astronaut. And at that point, their eyes lit up, and they started devouring the book. And it was wonderful to see. And it was, I had always heard this, that it's important for kids to see themselves in the pages of the book, but it was like a real-life demonstration for me to see just how powerful that was.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it really is. Like growing up, I would watch it in syndication, but one of my favorite shows was Chips, with Eric Estrada. So, I'd see Eric Estrada there in the lead role, and I'd go out in my bicycle and just like roll around thinking I was Frank Poncherello, yeah, I mean, that's just one example, but yeah, I mean, it's like Oscar said, it's super important for you to see yourself in these forms of entertainment, because entertainment, I mean, that, whether we like it or not, that molds us, whether it's TV, books, or movies, it does help mold us. So yeah, you definitely want to see yourself in the things that you're consuming. So that way, since it does influence what you do, you definitely want to see something positive, whenever you're being entertained and you think that you can aspire to be that.
Now, you mentioned Eric Estrada, and I do remember him in Chips, but when I got married, I was trying to relate to my wife, so I sat down and watched the entire run of Eric Estrada and Dos Mujeres, Un Camino.
Un Camino, yes. Yes, that was one heck of a show. Yeah, I watched pretty much every episode of that. I think all but like 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Whenever it.
I realized,
that's awesome. That's crazy.
Well, it was, and one of the things, as my Spanish got better, I realized, my Spanish isn't that much. Eric Estrada doesn't speak Spanish much better than I do.
No, I mean he learned his lines like right before they said action. That's how he got it done. And mad props to him. He did how many episodes of that show? Not barely knowing any Spanish. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, well, I know that was one of the things when my wife said to me, "Oh yes, Spanish novellas, it doesn't go on and on. There's a beginning and an end." So I thought, "Wow, this will be easy for me." And then there was like 700 episodes of it, I think.
Every day they air.
But it was,
one day there's an end somewhere.
But it was a great way for me to bond with my wife and learn a little bit of Spanish. So thank you, Eric Estrada, in that novella. Most of the folks who do listen to the show are adults, because we're talking to authors and talking about books we can read with our kids. And I know you mentioned that Mashbone and Grifty, we're probably not going to read that with our kids, but some of our adult audience may want to read it for themselves. So just give us a little bit more about that book, and so people can check that out.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll let Rolando do the pitch, but before he does that, Mashbone and Grifty, I love my comic so much. Please don't read it with your kids.
Yeah, maybe later, once they're grown, then you can, pass it on to them, and they'll love it too.
Okay.
No, but Mashbone and Grifty, like I said earlier, it's kind of a detective comedy. It's about two 20-somethings. They're pretty much losers. They hang out at a pub way too much. One of them is Mashbone. He's kind of like a monkey man, almost caveman looking guy. And Grifty's his kind of sad sack best friend, who's a wannabe super cop. So Mashbone kind of really wants to be this globetrotting detective, and Grifty wants to be a super cop. So they combine their powers to run a detective agency out of this pub. And what they're trying to do is just kind of clean up the streets a little bit, but just really just help people out in New Brownsville. So right off the bat, they run into the wrong guy, which is kind of a crime lord in the city. And really the series just kind of centers around them really just trying to make rent, just trying to keep this detective agency going, which is something they really want to do, trying to follow their dream of being a super cop and a globetrotting detective, and just all the weird and wacky stuff that they get into. It's very, very much just heavy humor, comedy based. Pretty much every other line, every other piece of dialogue in the book is a joke. And so that's kind of paying homage to, our comedy heroes when we were growing up. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of kind of slapstick. It's a lot of farce. But it's really fun. It's a really fun read, and it has been very well received, very well reviewed as well. But yeah, you'll love it. And as far as, it being a little more mature, it's not anything that's too gratuitous or anything like that. Everything has its place, but it's all just in the name of silly fun. Mm-hmm. It's not anything that's like way too over the top. It's just some parts are a little gory and things like that. There's a little bit of language.
Nothing you wouldn't find outside of Cartoon Network's Adult Swim lineup.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, so it would definitely fit right in with that kind of programming. And initially the idea did start as it being an animated series. But then we decided to just go back to kind of one of our first projects, which was making comic books. So far we have 3 issues, working on number 4 coming soon. And it's helped us to develop Lemon Pepper Huggz.
That's excellent. Any thought or any efforts right now to turn either one of these into an animated series?
Well, how do you say it? There's nothing standing in between that but air and opportunity, So if we were to get that chance, the answer is yes. In the meantime, we're going to build up a big enough reason for someone to want that.
Excellent. Well, it would make real good sense for us to tell folks where they can find out more about 5 Meat Comics and purchase Lemon Pepper Huggz.
Okay. Do you got the links, or I got the links if you want me to say it, Rolando?
Yeah, go right ahead.
All right. Well, if you want to get our books in print, you can get them at 5meatscomics.bigcartel.com, and that's the number 5, not the word 5. Or you can get them digital right now as you're listening to this podcast, Comics Central, COMIX Central.com/vendors/5meatscomics.
And there's a hyphen between 5 and meats and between meats and comics.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
And I only know that because I'm looking at it right now.
Also, at 5 Meats on Twitter, you can find all our links there as well.
Yeah, and that's how I found you guys, and I'm really, really glad I did. And we talked a little bit about seeing our kids seeing themselves in the pages of the books doing something positive. And I think it's also really important for kids to see kids who are different, look a little bit different than them, come from a different culture, but also for those kids to see kids being successful and characters who are different than them being successful, so that they can understand that we all have wonderful qualities and abilities, and that we can all be friends. We all share a lot of the same experiences, and that we can all support each other to do wonderful things and make our dreams come true.
Absolutely. And another thing that I'd like to add to Lemon Pepper Huggz is, we really like to keeps it real with these characters. And by that, I mean, like, they're not super hip. They're not too cool for school, you know? Mm-hmm. We draw them, happy. We draw them being a little bratty, or we write them being a little bratty. They cry. They act like kids. Mm-hmm. So we try to make them, relatable. Cause a kid that age, you know, as cool as they want to act, they're going to throw some tantrums. Mm-hmm. You know, they're going to cry. They're going to want something they might not be able to get. And we try to show that in an entertaining light.
Excellent. Well, it's on my list right now. I'm going to get the physical copies of Mashbone and Grifty from my 26-year-old son. I think I'm safe reading that with him. And
Probably.
We're going to pick up Lemon Pepper Huggz from my niece Jimena. And that's something I'm really looking forward to. I'm really excited about that. We've been talking to the author and illustrators of Lemon Pepper Huggz and some other great comics, Oscar Garza and Rolando Esquivel. Oscar, Rolando, I've had a blast speaking with you tonight. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having us on.
So much.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Carol Beener. She'll be in here telling us about her wonderful picture book, Snowman at Halloween. And I know what you're thinking. It's the end of August and we're talking about Halloween already. Well, August 4th. This is true. August 4th, I was at my local supermarket, and what were they loading onto the shelves? Halloween candy. I can't tell you what I said. I was surprised. I was surprised, and I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. That's the next edition of the Reading with the Kids podcast. Carolyn Beener and her book, Snowman at Halloween. Hey, if you're the author of a great children's book, we would love to help you celebrate that book. Being a guest is fun, it's easy, and it gives you the chance to tell thousands and thousands of people about your fantastic book. All you need to do is to go to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, click on the contact button, let us know about your great book. We will let you know about the next steps that you need to take. The next step I need to take is to thank the people who made today's show so wonderful. Our guest, Oscar Garza, Rolando Esquivel. I'm showing off now. Be sure to check out Lemon Pepper Huggz and 5 Meat Comics. Also want to thank our sponsors, Linda Phelps. Be sure to check out Johnny Pocket Band, Battle of the Bands. We want you to check out TryStoried.com so you can see how the Storied app can bring really, really a lot of joy to your family. And, of course, we want to thank the author of our Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read, The Crabapple Tree, Tom O'Toole, for sponsoring the show. I want to thank my amazing producer, Fatima Khan, for all she does for the show. Be sure to check out her blog at readingwithyourkids.com. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support that she gives me. Gracias, mi amor. I want to thank Augie the doggy for watching my back. And, of course, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And, as always, thank you so much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.